and Privacy Act, and that reports should be prepared and submitted electronically through the new PDPO portal. Today's session is intended to help us better understand the reporting requirement and, most importantly, how to prepare and successfully submit our annual data protection compliance reports. And of course, to take us through today's session, we are pleased to have with us Mr. Davis Othieno. He's the Manager, Compliance and Investigations at the Personal Data Protection Office. Just to give you a bit of background, Davis is a lawyer with 10 years of experience in compliance and regulatory matters, and is also a certified compliance professional. With this experience, of course, in compliance and regulatory matters, he will take us through the reporting process and help clarify that entities may. Thank you so much, Davis, for joining us, and you're welcome. Before you come in, allow me give some ground rules. First, I would request all participants to keep their microphones muted throughout the presentation to minimize background noise. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please post it in the chat. But of course, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session after the end of the presentation where we will all be able to ask as many questions as we have, as long as time allows. At this juncture, allow me hand over to the speaker. Davis, the floor is yours. Please take the floor and take us through how entities can prepare and file their annual data protection and privacy compliance reports. Over to you, Davis. Davis, I can't quite hear you. I don't know if it's on my end. Davis, are you there? I can see your screen, but I can't quite hear you. I'm not sure if it's on my end. Okay, I can't hear him too. Davis, we can't hear you. If you can hear me, maybe you could try leaving and joining again.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was a momentary technical difficulty. Thank you once again, Anita, for the introduction. And thank you to everyone on the call for joining us this morning as we take you through the process of fulfilling your compliance obligations by filing the annual compliance report. So, as a precursor to filing of the annual compliance report, please note that, first of all, you must have the valid registration with the Personal Data Protection Office. So if you do not have a valid registration, a valid certificate of registration for the reporting period, please purpose to, first of all, renew your registration, and then you'll be able to file the annual compliance report. There is a separate segment on registration, and there are separate webinars on that will be handled by my colleagues and are being handled. For our purposes this morning, I'm going to take you through the compliance reporting module, and this will require you to have the active registration. So I've already logged into our demo organization for this morning, which shall be the Orion Space Company. So upon logging in, you'll have a dashboard like this on your screen. When you go to the website, to the PDPO portal, that is pdpo.gov.ug. So for our purposes this morning, I've already logged in, and then I'll go to the annual compliance segment on the dashboard. Here it says file report. So you can see that there's this notice here of the service details that tells you that you ought to submit your organization's annual compliance report to demonstrate adherence to data protection and privacy requirements. Reports must be submitted between 1st July and 30th September each year. Obviously, for this year, we have given a bit of an extension because of the upgrade of the portal, which was only completed at the start of August. So for this the reporting period of 1st July 2025 to 30th June 2026, we are giving an allowance of reporting, filing the annual compliance reports from 24th of August, which was Monday this week, up to the 23rd of November 2026. So the deadline will be 23rd of November 2026. That is a 3-month window within which you are meant to file your annual compliance report. So the requirements is that what you're going to be required to do as you navigate this field is should have a DPO job description. First of all, primarily must have an appointed data protection officer. The data protection officer should have a job description and a performance appraisal. These are the documents that you'll need to attach. Data protection and privacy policies or privacy notices and statements, related organizational policies such as information security policies, ICT policies, and the like. Evidence of awareness or training conducted during the reporting period. Evidence of data protection and privacy training attended by the data protection officer. Evidence of data protection and privacy training facilitated by the DPO for staff in the organization. Evidence of training for agents, contractors, and third parties. How you commemorated the International Data Privacy Day, which falls on January 28th every year. Data protection impact assessment reports for any relevant processing activities, or if you have new processing activities, audit reports, and any other supporting compliance documentation. So right off the bat, you see that this notice outlines the requirements and the documentation that you'll need to have as you file your compliance report on the portal. So I'm going to click on file report and we're going to get started. So the first segment is on general information. That's an introduction. So given that we're filing the report for the period July 1st, 2025 to 30th June 2026, the financial year is 2025/2026. We operate on the government fiscal year, government financial year. So given that we're in August, I'll click the month of August as the report month. The organizational overview. This requires you to describe the organization's data processing activities, the size, sector served, and key compliance initiatives. So for our purposes this morning, let's just say we are, for example, a financial services provider, a bank, financial services provider, bank. We process employee information, customer information, and the like. So you can just fill that in. So once you get that general information, the next step is click here on save and continue. That will take you to the next tab. So this next tab asks you to confirm your current registration status and the validity period of your certificate. So this is auto-populated from your current certificate. So as I've said, before even filing the compliance report, you need to maintain an active registration with PDPO and you need to have an active certificate of registration. So if you don't have that, then you cannot proceed to this module for annual compliance reporting. So here, this has already been auto-populated because Orion Space Company that we're using this morning has a financial, rather has an up-to-date certificate of registration with PDPO. Then if the changes have been made to, in terms of physical location, in terms of contact address, so I've said we have moved to PDPO second floor, just as an example, as a demo. New contacts, we have new contact details at 0200 0000. Yeah, those are 10 digits. But if you have, during the reporting period, if you made any updates to your contact details on the portal, then these will be auto-populated. They'll be automatically detected and auto-populated here, which is what these changes in registered particulars has to do with. So where during the reporting period, during the financial, where you've made any updates on the portal as to your contact details, these will be auto-populated here. So because we haven't made any changes during the year, but now we are requesting to make a change, this is what we fill in. If you haven't experienced any significant changes in terms of the organizational address, the organizational details, then please feel free to leave this blank and then save and continue. Click on save and continue. So the next part of it is leadership and oversight. So this requires you to provide details on the data protection officer's role, who they report to, and the organizational support that is given to the data protection officer. So data protection officer details. Who does the data protection officer report to? I've indicated here that we have the DPO reports the managing director. So are there any team members supporting the data protection officer? Let's assume I'm the data protection officer and maybe the position is the chief compliance officer. I have team members under the department who include, I've just input for purposes of demonstration, compliance officer. Maybe you're supported by a compliance officer as the compliance officer on the call, maybe as manager compliance or the chief compliance officer of the organization. You have people under you who support you in fulfillment of your DPO role. You indicate them, and this is a required field. So the next under this is the job description of the data protection officer and the responsibilities. So you should have a JD of the data protection officer, and this is prescribed by law. The requirements that you should conform to are in Regulation 47 of the Data Protection and Privacy Regulations. So the DPO is required to conduct regular assessments and audits to ensure compliance with the Act and the regulations. You serve as the main point of contact between the organization and the Data Protection Office. Maintain a record of all data processing activities that are undertaken by your entity. You respond to data subject requests and access requests, informing them on how personal data is being used. If they want to access their data, you, as the DPO, it is your cardinal responsibility to ensure that you provide information on this, what measures the organization has in place to protect the data of the people that it serves or that it employs, ensuring that data subject rights are observed by the organization. So once you click yes on this, it will prompt you to upload a document containing the job description of the data protection officer. So I'd already uploaded, but let me just show you what it looks like. So here you'll be prompted to click, and the file formats that you can upload onto the portal are PDFs, not Word, not a PNG, not a JPEGs. It is strictly PDF. So For purposes of our demonstration this morning, I've created a file on compliance, a folder on compliance reporting. So given that we're meant to upload the job description of the data protection officer, let's upload a document and we see what that looks like when. So once that is done, it will inform you the description has been uploaded. Again, I must emphasize that it is strictly PDF files, not Word, no Excel, strictly Word, rather strictly PDF documents. File formats accepted. So the next under this is under the leadership part of it. Does the latest performance appraisal of the DPO include DPO responsibilities? This is a mandatory field. And if you click yes, then it will take you to the next one. If you click no, then this will raise a query on our end as we're reviewing as the Personal Data Protection Office. So we strictly, not strictly, but we encourage you to upload documents that speak to the responsibilities and performance appraisal of the data protection officer, how they have done their job during the reporting period. Because this is for evidential purposes, and this highlights to us that there is compliance with the data protection and privacy obligations and responsibilities. So here I'm going to click yes, I'm going to click yes, and then I'll be required to upload the document. So again, let me go to our test folder, click here, and then it will upload. So uploading, there we go. That is a confirmation that the document has been uploaded and it is entitled the performance appraisal. Does the DPO have direct access to senior management? Again, this is a mandatory field, and for purposes of fulfilling your compliance obligations, uh, the PDPO strongly advises that where you have a DPO, they should have direct access to senior management. So here on this field, I'm going to click yes here. And then how often, what is the frequency of the meeting with senior management? So it is a drop-down menu, and it has the following: weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, as needed, or ad hoc. Best practice is usually weekly. The DPO should be having a weekly interface with senior management to inform them on ongoing data protection and privacy measures in the organization, any access requests received, any data subject request rights received during that period, and so forth. Best practice is weekly, and the worst is when you have an ad hoc system of how the DPO meets with senior management. So here, what resources are allocated to the DPO function? This speaks to in terms of human resources, financial resources. Are they given appropriate work tools? Are they given perhaps copies of the Data Protection and Privacy Act to familiarize themselves with the obligations therein? So for here, for our purposes this morning, I've filled in that the DPO and his team attended a training on data protection and privacy on this date. The PDPO reports functionally and administratively to the MD. So there is no dotted line, and this ensures that they maintain a level of independence within the organization. Best practice again is that the DPO should have a level of independence within the organization so that they are not hamstrung by reporting channels in the fulfillment of their data protection and privacy obligations. So having filled in this part, we save this information and continue. So we're going to go to the next part is notices, policies, and procedures that the organization has in place that speak to its data protection and privacy practices. And here, once you click on any of these, you'll be required to provide evidence that these policies exist, documentary evidence. So as you can see here, question is asked, does your organization have the following policies and procedures in place? And for each selected policy, please attach the document that will serve as the evidence of that existing policy or procedure. And for each training indicated under each policy, attach related training evidence. So for our purposes this morning, I'm going to say that we have a data protection and privacy notice, a notice statement, the approval date, let's say perhaps 2025, September 9th, 2025. Review date. Now, this is informed by what you put within your document. This is there are no standards on this, but best practice is that you should be reviewing privacy notices or policies at least every 2 to 3 years. See if they are still functional, if they still meet the requirements. So our review dates, let me indicate for our purposes this morning, perhaps 2027. Again, the 2-year anniversary of this policy. Yeah. So it will, once you filled in these details, you populated these details, it will prompt you to upload the policy document so that it is reviewed on the back end by the PDPO team. So I'm going to click here and upload something. Okay, so that has been uploaded. Once it is uploaded, it shows you this green, attached in green. So let's say as Orion Space Company, we also have a data protection and privacy which was approved in 2025, let's say, August 2025, say August 11th, 2025. The review date, our data protection and privacy policy, let's say for purposes of demonstration, is renewable every 3 years. So we shall indicate 2028, the same date, August 10th, 2028, to prompt us to upload, and the policy has been uploaded. Now, say for instance, during the reporting period, we passed the policy, and once the policy was approved by management and passed and disseminated, our trainings on the data protection and privacy policy that were given to staff. So we'll highlight that there was one training. So once that is done, it will then prompt you to attach training evidence. So let's navigate here. We need to attach training evidence. Once you've trained any of the DPO or other staff on any of these policies, to prompt you to upload training evidence. So we're going to upload that, and you can see there's a confirmation that the document has been attached. So next, let's say for instance that we have an information security policy as well as Orion Space Company. Again, I'll click here. I will indicate the date when this was approved. Oh, when it was approved by the senior management of the company, or if you have a board that requires that is needed to approve these documents, you indicate the date of that approval, the relevant approval. The review date, let's say this is also subject to review every 3 years, so we shall indicate 2029, same date perhaps, or 14th June 2029. Okay, let's indicate 11th. And then it will prompt you to upload the policy. So I've uploaded, and you can see that there's the confirmation. The attached is in green. So maybe let's say we, as the DPO and as management of Orion Space Company, we didn't give people training on the information security policy, then we'll leave that. So for our purposes this morning, I'm going to say we have probably no records management policy, and then I'll scroll down. If you have several other policies that speak to your data protection and privacy practices, you're free to click here, and it will prompt you to add a new policy. So moving on, Are these policies and procedures available to all staff in your organization? Yes, I'm going to say yes. So once I click yes, I'll describe how the policies and procedures are communicated to staff through intra-company webinars, perhaps, meetings, and town halls. Okay, so once that is done, I've affirmed how our staff at Orion Space Company are communicated to regarding our data protection and privacy policies and procedures. I can click save and continue. But you'll note that this is not a mandatory field because it is not marked in red. So you're free to leave that unfilled. The next segment of our annual compliance report is training and awareness. So here we need to highlight the training and awareness activities attended by the DPO, the Data Protection Officer, that the DPO facilitated for staff and that staff underwent during the reporting period. So uh, this is a mandatory field and you need to show that the DPO was trained. Because why do we insist on this being mandatory? Because we expect that during the reporting period, you should upskill your DPO in terms of data protection and privacy in at least one area. There are always emerging areas in data protection and privacy. So for our purposes this morning, let me put data protection and privacy in AI systems, perhaps, just as a placeholder there. If facilitated by PDPO. Date of training. So once you fill that in, then click here, date of training. Let's say perhaps they attended this in 2025, November 2025, 19th November. You upload evidence of that training. Could be like a certificate of attendance, could be a certificate of recognition of the training issued by the facilitator of the training. It could be the training flyer. It could be an attendance sheet that the PPO signed. So we'll upload that. So there's a confirmation that the document has been attached. Now, we have said you have to attach evidence of at least one training, but during the reporting period, the DPO could have undergone more trainings. So where you have more than one training, just click add training, and then you follow the same process. Indicate the title of the training, who facilitated it, the date, and then upload the evidence of the training, attendance list, certificate of recognition, certificate of attendance, the training flyer, things like that. Maybe pictures, you could have a picture, but you need to convert that into, put it into a PDF and then upload. So next, data protection and privacy trainings facilitated by the data protection officer for staff in the organization. So here again, we're going to follow the same process, but here, this will require the DPO to undertake training of staff within the entity on data protection and privacy practices, because this speaks to one of their core responsibilities as highlighted by Regulation 47.3, which we saw earlier under this tab number 3. So say for instance, maybe the DPO conducted a webinar to human resources. He trained human resources department, or she trained human resources department. Say for instance, we have 10 staff in human resources and 10 staff completed the training. Then we also require evidence that this training was conducted by the DPO. So you can have certificates, you can have pictures, attendance lists. So we attach that and it has been uploaded. Where you did more than one, again, the same process follows. You click here to add which department was trained by the DPO. Then most companies also have instances in which they deal with agents, third parties, and contractors. So let's say, for instance, Orion Space Company, like I said, is a financial institution, but they have independent contractors. Like they have maybe debt recovery companies that do debt recovery on their behalf, all on recoveries, debt recovery company. So the DPO during the reporting period is also required and obligated to facilitate trainings for people that you deal with as the entity, your agents, the third parties that you come across, and independent contractors that help you as the entity. So maybe the debt recovery company has, let's say, 7 staff, and 7 come to the training. Again, this will require you to attach evidence of the training. So we're going to upload our training evidence. Where more than one agent or third party or contractor was trained, again, the same process follows. You can click here and populate those with the requisite details. Then in terms of the data protection and privacy trainings, as PDPO, as the Data Protection Office, we also we are trying to inculcate a culture of commemoration of the International Data Privacy Day, which falls on January the 28th of each and every year. So if you did something to commemorate the International Data Privacy Day, you are free to stipulate it here. So for our purposes, I'll just do something brief. We attended the workshop organized by PDPO. We often have commemorative events as PDPO, and communication is sent out about these commemoration events and the location and what activities will be comprised in this commemoration. So after you filled in, then you will need to attach a commemoration report. So you add a file, or here this can be um, photographic evidence. Again, you convert it into PDF. It could be a flyer of the commemorative event you held and things like that. So we have attached our evidence showing how we commemorated the International Data Privacy Day. So having done that, uh, so having done that, we're now free to continue, navigate the next section of the report. Now, the next few sections are fairly easy. They are mandatory to fill in, but they require yes or no responses. So, complaints related to data protection and privacy. Did you receive any complaints during the reporting period from data subjects? Those could be employees, the people, the customers you have, the clients, your independent contractors that you deal with, but whose personal information you may have. So if you've not received any complaints during the reporting year, first indicate no. If yes, then you click yes, and you'll be required to select the nature of the complaint. Now, the Data Protection and Privacy Act and the regulations provide for the nature of complaints. These could be related to unlawful processing, unlawful disclosure, unlawful sale of personal data, and these are offenses created under sections 35 and 36 of the Data Protection and Privacy Act. So where you have received a complaint as the entity during the reporting period, you'll be required to highlight the nature of that complaint. And maybe you've also failed to erase information that is out of date, the data subject fields is out of date, maybe you failed to rectify an inaccurate personal detail, then it is a drop down. It provides you with the nature of the complaint. So here you're meant to select the most applicable and the most appropriate. So let's say that a data subject came to us during the reporting period and they had a complaint that we failed to honor a request for access of personal data. Maybe perhaps we received one complaint in relation to this. We have no pending. What actions did we take? So here you will highlight the actions. So you move to these fields, but this is only applicable where you received a complaint. So you highlight complaint, subject requested or access to joint account details, given that we're a financial institution. How did we address this? We informed them that we could not comply with the request because they lacked consent of the other data subject, given that it's a joint account. Maybe you can highlight that, something like that. This is just for demo purposes. I'm not saying that this is the type of thing that will apply, but for demo purposes this morning. What measures have been put in place to prevent similar complaints in the future? Maybe we say we have revised our access request procedures and educated customers on these. Yeah. So save and continue. Now the next section requires you to report any data security breaches that took place during the reporting period. So this is a legal requirement that is created by Section 23 of the Data Protection and Privacy Act and Regulation 33 of the regulations. And this is why we require you to fill in this information. So have you suffered any breaches during this reporting year? Let's say, for demo's sake, that no, we haven't. Click that and then save and continue. So it will take you to the next one. The data protection and privacy regulations require a data protection impact assessment to be carried out where the collection or processing of personal data poses a high risk to the rights and freedoms of the data subjects. So when this often applies when you're introducing maybe new data processing measures, new data processing procedures, rolling out a new product. Let's say that in our case, we don't have any new products during the reporting period. So I'm going to click no. But if we had one, I would click yes. Then it would ask me again to highlight the processing or collection activity, the date that we concluded this, and then upload evidence of that. Key to note is that for data protection impact assessments, once you've done the impact assessment, you're meant to provide an impact assessment report to the Personal Data Protection Office, which is meant to be reviewed, and you'll be given a go-ahead or not. And that is stipulated by Regulation 12 of the Data Protection and Privacy Regulations. So if you proceed without a data protection impact assessment for any new processing activity, for any new collection activity, and we get to find out, then of course you'll be subject to a penalty for failing to produce this impact assessment report and getting no objection, failing to get an objection by the office, from the office. So So if we say we haven't done any impact assessment, click no, save and continue. Have we done any audits during the reporting year? If we have done any audits, again, the same process, would click yes. Let's say for demo's sake that we have done an audit. So audits and assessments broadly fall into the following three categories. First-party audits, also known as internal audits, where you as the entity, you self-assess. And this is prompted usually by the entity itself internally. Second-party audits are also known as supply audits, where an organization either audits sub-processors or is audited as a processor by its controller. And the third-party audit is an external audit, where an organization is more objectively removed, such as an audit by the regulator, PDPO, or an independent agency. So the first party audit is self-prompted, like that is internal. So you can, for instance, require your internal Department of Compliance, Risk and Governance, or the internal audit to audit you. Once it's done during the reporting period, you indicate. So here I'm going to indicate that we did a first party audit and it was data mapping to identify exposure, key exposure is the audit. It was only one. What percentage of the implementation of the recommendations has been carried out to date at the time of reporting? Let's say for us take this morning that maybe we have implemented 50% of the recommendations that came from the data privacy audit. So we upload the report. So there it is. There is a confirmation that the document has been attached successfully. So if you indicate that you're subject to an audit, then these become fields for you to fill in. They become mandatory. They so key finding summary. We need to maybe have a record of our processing activities. Have an inventory of processing activities as Orion. What measures have been put in place to implement the audit recommendations? Officer assigned. Okay. So once we are filled in, then we can save and continue. Now, on this one, I need to belabor the point that sometimes as entities, where we feel that finance obligations being fully addressed, because when we may be subject to a audit by the regulator, which is a party audit, and this is the regulations. So in certain instances, as an entity, PDPO may send you notice of an unintended audit and will proceed to audit your data protection and privacy practices and then provide you with an audit report. As per now, we haven't seen any bad levels of compliance warranting such an audit, but the law allows us to do this. So let's not be prompted by a third-party audit of the Data Protection Office. Let us try to adhere to the compliance requirements and the compliance obligations. So after doing this, you can say save and continue. So here we are almost done. Conclusion, which requires you to provide a detailed overview of your organization's operations and compliance efforts. Let me see, training. Let's say we did training for DPO and staff, commemorated data privacy day, and so on. But the maximum characters allowed here is 500. So declaration, here you input the name of the person declaring this. So let us put our phone. I'm going to put mine. Sometimes the person declaring may not be the person submitting the report. It could be that the DPO is submitting the report, but the person who did the declaration filled this in was maybe an officer who reports to the DPO. So we can just say someone else. Title person submitting the report, data protection officer, chief. So once that is done, once you fill this in, save and continue, save the information, continue. So it will give you a preview, which you can print or download when you click here. So we review our information that we have provided in this annual compliance report. And if everything is accurate, which it is this morning, you'll be prompted to submit the final report. I recommend that before you submit the final report, you print a copy or you download a copy that you can keep for your purposes, for evidence. But the system, once you submit the report, it will give you a system generated number as well. So here is our reference number. Our system generated reference number is CM2608-138. So this is, you must save this as the person who has submitted the report, and it will help you with tracking your compliance report. Now, as PDPO, once you've submitted the report, we aim to give you feedback on the report within 21 days from the time of submission. So if you don't receive any feedback within 21 days, you're free to get in touch on our channels, on the portal, on the phone lines, and ask what is going on with the annual compliance report. And after we have given you feedback and we have proposed certain actions, corrective actions, you have 14 days within which to submit a remedial action plan to PDPO. And then we will deem you as having been successfully compliant. So once you have the reference number, it will prompt you to go back to the dashboard. And this is the dashboard here. So thank you. And the presentation is at an end on how to fill in our annual compliance reports. We shall now open it up to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Davis, for that very insightful presentation on how to file your annual compliance reports. I hope we've been able to learn the entire process from A to Z. And in case you have missed anything, we'll be sharing the recording so that during the time you're preparing your report, you can refer to it. Davis, there's quite a number of questions in the chat. I don't know if you prefer that I probably read like three as you respond. I don't know. Is that okay?
Let's take sets of five questions. I respond, then we take another set of five. That is the approach we are going to use.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the first question, I cannot quite tell which section this was, but Brian said we cannot see the drop-down menu on frequency of meeting with senior management by the data protection officer. The second question from Joel Peter, what kind of evidence is required to prove that a training was conducted? And then 3, Someone asked, do these training webinars held by PDPO count as evidence for DPO training? And then someone said, must a PDPO representative be available for the training or it can be done in-house? I don't know if I already made 5.
Yes, I believe those are 5.
Okay, over to you.
So let's start with somebody saying that they didn't see the drop-down menu on frequency of interactions with management. Let's go back to the module. So we're going to utilize another account for these purposes. So let's just do this. It is under section 3 when you're filling in the annual compliance report under leadership, where you provide the data protection officer's details and who they report to. Then there's a section here when you drop down. Does the DPO have direct access to senior management? Where it is yes, this is a mandatory field which you must fill in. Where you say yes, then here the question is how often does the DPO meet with senior management? And this is where the drop down menu is. So it's provided here weekly, monthly, the temporal requirements, the temporal periods within which the DPO should meet with senior management are provided in this drop-down menu. So can be weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, as needed, or ad hoc. And I stated that the best practice is that the DPO should at least have a weekly interaction with senior management on data protection and privacy practices of the organization, give them updates. The worst is probably ad hoc, where this comes up just as when you feel it is necessary. So I hope that answers the first question. The second one, what evidence of training? I believe I answered this, but this can be re-emphasized. I touched upon it during the presentation. Evidence of training, you can provide certificates of attendance, certificates of recognition for maybe having made a spectacular submission during that training. You can provide attendance lists where your name appears as the DPO or as staff of the entity that attended that training. You can provide photographic evidence, pictures, but the key being that photographic evidence, you convert it into the acceptable file format, which is PDF, and then upload. So those are the things that count as evidence of training. Now, moving on to the next question, do the monthly webinars done by PDPO count as evidence? These also count as, yes, they can count as evidence because we are providing you maybe training on latest developments in the world of data protection and privacy. However, we still emphasize that as the entity, you need to scope out your own trainings and provide the people there internally, the staff internally, trainings on these. Don't just merely rely on the PDPO webinars. So we shall have the next set, Anita.
Okay, thank you. Someone asked, what happens to organizations that have M&E officers who are responsible for data protection? Must the organization have data protection officers? The next question, why is the agents, third parties, contractors field mandatory? What happens when it's not applicable for my organization and yet I cannot skip it? And next, what happens, that's the third, what happens if no training was done by the PDPO for the staff, as I see this is a compulsory field? And the next question I'll take, for what purpose is the commemoration of the International Independence Day? I hope you meant Data Privacy Day, not Independence Day, Brian. So for what purpose is the commemoration of the International Data Privacy Day for our organization? What value does it add? Okay, and the last one I'm going to take is, what if one doesn't have contractors or third parties? Okay, that relates to the other question I had mentioned. What if one doesn't have contractors or third parties? How do you handle that mandatory field of trained third parties? I think you could take those and then we proceed.
Yeah, let us dispose of this, then we'll move on to the next set. Yes. What happens first when an organization has M&E people as the data protection officers? Uh, First of all, as the data protection office, we do not dictate who you appoint as the data protection officer. The only conditions are that first, this person must be of an appropriate level of seniority within the organization. They must have an idea of at least data protection and privacy and best practices in data protection and privacy. They must be able to interact with the management team of the entity or the senior management team of the entity periodically, and that they must have a level of independence. And then finally, that you equip them with the appropriate tools and resources to fulfill their role and their function as a data protection officer. So it doesn't matter what the title is, but if we can see that this person meets these requirements, that is, the appropriate level of seniority within the organization, the appropriate tools and resources have been availed to this person, and this includes like training to this person to enable them to fulfill their function as the data protection officer, that they interact with management. And this is the whole purpose of what we have been demonstrating this morning, because you realize that in those fields, they give us a window into your data protection practices as the entity. So for instance, let's say if you left the field of training blank, then that means that perhaps you're not equipping the DPO with the requisite tools and resources to fulfill their function. And that will raise a query on the back end from the office, from the PDPO office, which you'll be asked to address. And that will be sent to you through the portal. So once you file the report and we have reviewed, and we realize that maybe one of the sections you indicated that the DPO did not receive training, this will create a query on our end as the regulator, and this query will be sent back to you, and you'll be asked to explain why the DPO did not receive training. Maybe you had resource constraints, so you can input that. But if there is no reasonable, uh, if there is no reason why the DPO did not receive training, and we don't find that it is a reasonable excuse, then that will be a breach of the compliance obligation. And it will be indicated in the corrective action report, and we may require you to fulfill that within a prescribed timeline. If you don't, then it can be escalated to things such as prosecution of the entity. So that disposes of that question. What happens when no training is done? I believe I somewhat answered that as I was answering uh, whether M&E people can be data protection officers. Again, I'll emphasize that it doesn't matter the title, but does this person meet the requirements? The appropriate level of seniority? Do they have data protection and privacy, some idea or experience in data protection and privacy? Are they given the requisite tools and resources to perform this function? Do they engage with the management of the organization on data protection and privacy issues on a periodic basis? If those are fulfilled, then the title is not so much of something that will be looked at. Then why is the field for agents, third parties, and contractors mandatory? Uh, it may not apply to certain entities. I think we proceeded based on our available data that most data processors, data collectors, usually deal with agents and third parties. However, this is a development issue. I'll ask maybe Timothy from our developer to highlight why this field is made mandatory, and it may be optional. There may be certain organizations, certain data processors or collectors that don't interact with third parties. Timothy, please come in.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anganya Timothy, and I'm with GovNet Services Limited. As pertaining that question, normally when users interact with the system, we always take their feedback and we make changes necessary and take advisement. So since that has been raised, we shall revise it and see that it's addressed. So we have taken note of that, and with time, I believe you'll see some change. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy, for elucidating that quite clearly. So, Anita, I'll request you to remind me of the last question in this set.
The last question was also related to third parties, so basically you've answered all the questions. Maybe there was something about the commemoration of International Data Privacy Day. If
Oh,
you could
yes,
answer
yes.
that.
Why do we commemorate International Data Privacy Day? International Data Privacy Day is just a day set out one day within the calendar year to remind people of the data privacy, the need for data privacy and protection. So why do we insist on this? Because as registered data processors and data controllers, we are, of course, proceeding under the assumption that you are well aware of your compliance requirements, and this is just it is a goodwill to try to recognize the International Day on Data Privacy and Protection that is set out by the United Nations. It is a gesture of goodwill, and it speaks to your level of interaction with data protection and privacy best practices, data protection and privacy awareness. So it is an indicator of your awareness of data protection and privacy. It is just a baseline, but again, as stated, if we interact periodically with data protection officers and other controllers and processors and realize that this is an onerous obligation, this may be revisited. However, it is just an indicator at a basic level of your awareness of data protection and privacy. Because it is similar to, let's say, for instance, what has been done by the government to champion awareness on HIV/AIDS. So International HIV/AIDS Day is marked every December 1st. Just in a bid to raise awareness on the scourge of HIV/AIDS. So similarly, in a bid to raise awareness about the emerging and developing area of data protection and privacy. That is why we try to mark the International Data Privacy Day on January 28th of every year. Thank you. That disposes of that question. Anita, let's have the next set. There are some hands being raised. Let us take the next set, then we'll have questions from those who have raised their hands. I've seen about 2 hands raised. Anita.
Okay, all right. I'll take the first set of five questions, and then we'll take on those whose hands are raised. And I request that if we are not speaking, please keep muted so that we do not have noise interfering. So moving on, the first question, someone says, our certificate expires in a few days next week. Can I file the annual report with an expired certificate, or I need to first have the certificate renewed? And then Chiluka says, what happens to the trainings where they do not award certificates? What evidence is provided then? I did hear you speak about flyers and the rest, but you could probably again shed more light on that. And then someone says, do we include change of CEOs under change of particulars? Then in case there's no information to put under mandatory fields, this was somehow tackled. Will the system allow us to proceed? Someone says, how do we make payment? We don't really pay for compliance reports. I don't know if this question is tagged to registration. Then the next question, Edmond says, is it possible to share a template of the performance appraisal? And then the last question I'm going to take, someone says, what happens with the remedial actions process? Do we update the compliance report, or is that portion manual submission for the PDPO's further review? Over to you, Davis.
Thank you, Anita. Let us, the first one, can you file with an expired certificate? No, you cannot. And I believe at the outset of this presentation, I emphasized that in order to file an annual compliance report, you need to have an active registration, an active certificate of registration. So the law first and foremost provides that 3 months before the expiry of your registration with the Personal Data Protection Office, you commence the process of renewing that registration. That is what the data protection and privacy regulations provide for. So ideally, you should be checking, because you have credentials and logins to the portal. You should be keeping, as the DPO, perhaps, or someone in the DPO's department, you can charge someone with the responsibility of checking on these certificates, the validity of these certificates of registration. So where you notice that it is about to expire, at least within a 3-month period, commence the process, because on the PDPO end, we receive plenty of requests sometimes for renewal, and the purpose of you commencing that renewal process 3 months before the expiry is to give you and the PDPO ample time to review the application for the renewal and then advise on the actions. Or if there are no queries raised, then usually we'll wait until the expiry and then issue the new certificate immediately, the renewed certificate. So the purpose of the 3 months is to help you to identify any requirements that you may not have to renew the certificate, and then put those requirements in place, make the submission, and have it approved. However, where you have an expired certificate, you will not be able to access any of the modules, including the module on annual compliance reports. So the first step, if you want to file an annual compliance report with an expired certificate as an entity, first of all, apply for renewal of the certificate. And this can be done on the portal. If you have not updated your details as an entity on the portal, please go to the portal, do a data update. Then upon the data update being done, you will be prompted to, you can then embark on the renewal of the certificate of registration with PDPO. So once that is done and the certificate is issued, that is when you can file the annual compliance report. However, be mindful that you only have a period of up to 23rd November to file these annual compliance reports. Now, this takes me into the payment. There is no payment required to file the annual compliance report. Maybe this DPO or person was asking about payment in terms of registration or renewal. And the fee is 100,000 Uganda shillings. So if you don't have an active certificate of registration, it is expired, or if you're not an organization or entity that is registered with PDPO, then go to the portal and put the application, input the application. But I believe all of us on this call are entities that are compliant in terms of registration with PDPO. But I need to emphasize there is no payment for the annual compliance report. The payment is in terms of registration or at renewal. And the system generates payment reference numbers for you, and you'll navigate that. There'll be subsequent webinars on how to navigate the registration process as well. Is it possible to share a template of the performance appraisals for the DPO? This is something that we're embarking on as part of our guidance as the PDPO. We're mandated to guide. So a template is being developed. But for now, during this reporting period, please use templates that are then converted to PDF, and that can be uploaded onto the portal. We have not prescribed a template as per now. However, I believe as entities, you have performance management frameworks, and maybe you can use that performance management framework to also assess the data protection officer in terms of their performance. And this should be aligned to the job description that you gave to the data protection officer. So much as there is no prescribed format, at least we expect to receive something that speaks to the JD given to the data protection officer, and that speaks to the company, the entity's performance management framework. In terms of remedial action plans, what happens when the PDPO requires you to implement a remedial action plan? So after you've submitted the report and we have reviewed it, we have raised queries, and you fix the queries, but still there are remedial actions that you need to integrate into your practices in order to become wholly compliant. The remedial action plan is a separate document. So, and that eventually will also be uploaded onto the portal as we improve and advance and move with the times. However, these remedial action plans, normally at present, they are sent back to you in terms of queries and issues for you to address. When the final report is disposed of, the annual compliance report is disposed of, we'll make a formal communication on issues that you should address. And this will then inform the entity of the compliance gaps that maybe they have, that they experience. So that disposes of the last set of 5 questions. There are a number of hands that have been up. Let us take Michael Omara. Omara, please unmute and make your submission.
Thank you, Davis. Thank you, Anita. Lisa. Davis, just let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take on some inquiries. Maybe you can reply. Beginning with the first one, security certifications like CompTIA Security Plus and certified in cybersecurity considered valid by PDPO. That's number one. The second is about password resets. Following the recent upgrade for the PDPO system, looks like I'm unable to access the system. Is anyone willing to help with the resets? Number 3 is about our organization, which had submitted the compliance report earlier on by sending a PDF document to compliance@pdpo.go.ug via email. So do we have to duplicate efforts doing the same through the system, or we should wait for the next year? Then, are there any in-country trainings PDPO is planning to organize to benefit DPOs in any organizations? Lastly, Davis, I heard you mentioning about a DPO having a job description. So must that be a separate description? So several of us have roles in IT, like IT support officers, system administrators, and our JD is incorporated to have the role capturing the data protection role. So maybe you can clarify about those. Thank you so much. Anissa, in case you see this statement, the long paragraph, just ignore it. Davis is willing to answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's first answer those, then we'll take the next set of questions. Security certifications accepted by PDPO as evidence of training for the data protection officers. The short answer to this is yes. Information security management certifications are accepted because part of your role as the data protection officer is to ensure that information security management is observed and practiced in the entity where you're the DPO. And this also speaks to do you have incident management procedures? Or what are your mechanisms for responding to possible data breach incidents? So because these are closely allied, then as PDPO, yes, we do recognize information security certifications for data protection officers. And if you've undertaken information security trainings, then these formulate part of the framework for DPO trainings. So those are accepted. With regards to password reset, I will ask one of my colleagues on the call to handle that. But the short way of navigating this is that for password resets, if you're not able to reset your password, there are telephone numbers available on the PDPO portal. So you can call one of those and then you'll be assigned somebody to help you navigate the password reset process. But Timothy, perhaps you can come in again in regard to password reset.
Yes, hello. Am I visible? Am I audible?
You're audible, Timothy. You're not visible.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, as regards password reset, currently it's a working feature that you can access anytime. But if you're having a challenge, just as Mr. Davis mentioned, please call into the office and then you'll be resolved. At times, it's an isolated case that you could be facing, maybe due to your some browser settings and other issues that could be arising from your device. So always feel free, call in, and then we shall help you with any issue regarding to password reset, payments, and then also any general issue regarding the operation of the system. So ideally, I feel questions should be more in line with compliance and this presentation. But if you have any system-related issue, please call in, and then we shall be in position to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. So if you have issues with navigating the system, there is a system feature on password reset. However, if you're not able to reset the password after engaging this feature, then please feel free to reach out in our channels and you'll be supported by the team. The third question was what happens to organizations that had submitted PDF reports to compliance at pdpo.go.ug. I will emphasize that the portal is the only authorized channel for submission of annual compliance reports. So where you had submitted a PDF report, please be informed that these PDF reports will not be considered. The submissions made on the portal are the only submissions that are going to be considered. So if you had uh, submitted a PDF, please just reproduce the information that was contained in that report on the various tabs in the portal, as I've demonstrated this morning, and then you submit on the portal. So that will come to us. Again, I will emphasize the portal is the only authorized channel for submission of our annual compliance reports effective 24th August. The other question was, are there any in-country trainings that are conducted by PDPO? Yes, we do engage the public, the general public, and data processors, data controllers in trainings. During this period, we're also partnering with NITA to bring information about data protection and privacy under the Better Guard campaign. So there'll be campaign activations that are going around. And please, if you're invited to those, please purpose to attend those Better Guard campaign activations. There are sensitization and awareness uh, programs that are being carried out by the Personal Data Protection Office as well, and data collectors and processors are involved. For now, what we're doing is targeted campaigns, and right now we're really emphasizing the financial services sector. That is commercial banks and mobile money agents and the banking agents. So, but we hope to roll this out to even other sectors, including the telecoms, including NGOs. We have partnered with the National NGO Bureau to provide awareness to the non-profit sector on data protection and privacy, because it's also a large segment. So yes, the PDPO does offer these in-country trainings, and we do this through our awareness campaigns, our sensitization programs, and where we are with, of course, eventually we're going to also roll out trainings that are paid for. And then if you wish to partake in those, you'll be guided at the appropriate time and the appropriate moment on how to access those trainings. The final question that came from Omara was, must there be a separate description for the data protection officer, separate from their other duties that they handle? The answer to this is no. However, when you're appointed a data protection officer, you receive that appointment as a data protection officer, then we would require that within, maybe you've been acting as an IT officer, or maybe the lawyer for the organization, and then you've been given an appointment as the DPO. Your part of your job description should speak to what you do as a data protection officer, and it should be aligned with the requirements in the Data Protection Act and the regulations thereunder. So when you're given this appointment, before accepting also as the person appointed, please don't just accept and say, oh no, maybe more money is coming in terms of allowances for acting as a DPO or whatever, what have you. Closely examine, do you understand the field of data protection and privacy primarily? And first of all, if you do, well and good. Now, the tasks that you're going to carry out, do they align with data protection and privacy requirements, practices? Have you examined the obligations under the law and international best practice? So you may not need to have a separate job description for you as a data protection officer. However, your job description as a lawyer, maybe as an IT officer, for example, should embed these data protection activities in the job description. So that is the way of disposing of that question. Let's take another set of 5. Anita, let's go to the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on. Okay, someone had asked, are we supposed to have all the 3 policies as a company? And in the next question, to kindly confirm the approval and review date section for policies. Does approval mean the first time it was ever approved? Then does review mean the last time it was reviewed? Meaning that the approval date will never change if we are filing annually. I don't know if that's clear for you, Davis. Is it mandatory to have, sorry?
No, it's not quite clear. Maybe you rephrase.
Maybe I don't
Mandatory
want
to
to
have a
probably give
policy.
him. It's talking about approvals and reviews. I'm thinking Adbayo Williams could probably put his hand up or unmute and just ask the question. Okay, I can see your hand is up. You could just unmute and ask the question. That would greatly help.
Yeah. Hi, Anita. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for the webinar so far. Okay. So just to explain my question. So what I'm saying is regarding the approval, right? is the expectation that that's the date the policy was first approved? Take a privacy policy, for instance. Say it was approved for the very first time in 2022, and then it's reviewed annually. So what I'm saying is, every year when we're filing the compliance report, that would that approval date stay the same, since it's the same date that that policy was approved, right? Since it's the same policy, as an example, meaning it's just the review date that will be updated based on when it was last reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let me just answer that before we proceed.
Okay. Okay.
At the bio, yes, that interpretation is correct. Say, for instance, you have a data privacy policy or an information security management policy that was first approved in 2019, maybe September 2019. You'll indicate that as the date of approval. Then the date of review, because a good policy should indicate review periods, review dates. So when it is reviewed, you'll indicate the relevant review date. If it is reviewed annually, you indicate the review date during that particular year. So, but the approval date that is considered is the date of first approval by the management or board of the entity.
Okay, thank you very much. That clarifies.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Anita, maybe we'll take some more questions in the chat.
All right, thank you. So the first question I had read was about whether it is mandatory to upload all the three policies. And then the next question, Innocent says, clarify on the need of seeking a no objection for impact assessment and the exact part of the regulation requiring a no objection. And then the next question is it mandatory for all organizations to file the annual compliance report? Then another question is,
Could you repeat that, Anita? Is it mandatory for?
is it mandatory for all organizations to file the annual compliance report?
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then next, kindly share advice on how third parties can be trained. Will newsletters sent to third parties suffice as training evidence? And then the last one I'm going to take, when preparing these policies, are there some standards that we need to follow as a company? Over to you.
Okay. Let me start. Is it mandatory for all organizations to file the annual compliance reports? Yes. If you are registered with the Personal Data Protection Office, it is mandatory for you to file the annual compliance report. And this is a legal requirement. And this is created under Regulation 50 of the Data Protection Regulations. So Regulation 50 stipulates that within 90 days after the end of every financial year, which is July to June, we operate on the Ugandan government's financial year, you must, which is why the reporting period is usually between July 1st and September 30th every year. However, as we have said, due to the upgrades of the portal this year, the reporting window has been enlarged, and it is from 24th August to 23rd November to allow all the submissions. But in response to, is it mandatory? Yes, it is mandatory to file an annual compliance report. And if you don't file the annual compliance report, then that is a possible breach of the data protection and privacy regulations, as well as the Act. And we shall proceed to prosecute, and you may face any number of enforcement actions, including suspension of your registration with PDPO. And this is provided for under Regulation 48 of the regulations. So, given that this notice has been sent out, the notice was sent out on 24th August, the PDPO has fulfilled the requirement to issue a notice to data collectors and processors to submit the annual compliance reports. So if you're registered with us and we have you in our records and we know who you are, and you fail to provide the annual compliance report, then that is a breach, and we shall proceed under Regulation 48. You'll be handled accordingly. Any advice on how third parties can be trained? Do newsletters to agents suffice? This is with regard to advice on how third parties can be trained. First and foremost, you could explore avenues such as having them come into the organization and doing town halls. We have certain data collectors and data processors who always give us evidence of compliance in terms of training by providing us dates of the town halls, and then they ask for the PDPO to be in attendance just to observe what is happening. So this is one of the avenues that you can explore. Newsletters, do they suffice? Well, the problem with a newsletter is that you may not, unless you have a mechanism for receiving feedback on the content of that newsletter, then you may not be in a position to establish whether your training has made an impact. Do you have a feedback mechanism for receiving feedback after the distribution, the dissemination of this newsletter? If you do, then provide us with that feedback that you received upon having disseminated this newsletter. So newsletters may be tricky because, like I have said, you have no control over whether the message was received and understood by the people that you're trying to impart this message upon. So for that reason, usually it's better channels such as webinars, such as in-person interactions are explored in terms of training, the training requirement. Okay, then the question came up on the DPIS, Data Protection Impact Assessments. So they asked me to elaborate on this. The regulation 12 of our regulations, data protection and privacy regulations, stipulate that where there is a high risk collection or processing activity, and it may pose a high risk to the rights and freedoms of individuals, those being Ugandan citizens who have their data collected or processed by you as the entity, then before you do any collection or processing, you shall carry out an assessment of the impact of this collection or processing activity on the rights and freedoms of Ugandan citizens. And the law proceeds to further elucidate on what this impact assessment should have. So it should have a systematic description of the processing and the purposes of the processing. So the purpose should be outlined and together with the lawful basis for processing of this data. If it is consent, say so. If you're fulfilling your mandate as a public entity, say so. If you're fulfilling this pursuant to the contractual obligation, say that. It should have an assessment of the risks to personal data and measures to address risks and any other information that the PDPO may require. So just to bring it home, when you're an entity and perhaps you have a new processing activity, a new product that you're going to roll out, and this product maybe touches upon inclusion of personal data of Ugandan citizens, you are required to carry out what we call a data protection impact assessment, submit this to the office, and these submissions effective this financial year are also going to be done on the portal. There will be no submissions of documents to PDPO. This should come to the portal. And again, this will require you to maintain an active registration with PDPO. So once you submit the data protection impact assessment report, this is reviewed by the PDPO within a period of 21 days and feedback is given. But this is when you're engaging a new processing operation, a new collection operation, data collection operation, or a new data collection or processing activity. So that should dispose of that question. We'll take a question from Olu, who has raised their hand, and then the last set of 5 questions, Anita. So Olu, please make your submission. Then we'll take another set of 5 and conclude today's interaction. Olu, please. take it away. Olu, if Olu is not ready to make the submission, we'll have Aaron Chironda who raised the hand. Aaron? Okay. Anita, let's read out the next set of 5, and that will be our last.
Okay. Thank you, Davis. Thank you, the rest of the team.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Anita,
Someone
perhaps
saying
there was-
something?
Yes, I
Yes,
see
Anita.
Alimaz Okello.
Okay.
Anita,
Yes, yes.
this is Innocent. I'm sorry you haven't selected me, but my hand was up.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, this one you talked about mandatory for a mandatory submission of the annual report by all registered entities. Now I'm looking at our agents. These are the agency banking. We have agents as banks. Are they also required to complete this report? But if you look at the content of this report, I don't know how easy that is going to be for them to complete.
Thank you, Innocent. With regard to the banking agents and mobile money agents, there is a truncated version of this report for them. And we are also engaging them on how they can fill in their truncated version of the report. Because as you rightly said, some of this information may not be in the possession of the banking agents, mobile money agents. So with them, we are going to deal with them by having them fill in a truncated version of the report, an abridged version of the report. And we're also engaging them and my interactions with them in regard to how to fill in the truncated version of the report. Alimaz, that will be the last submission. Then we'll take a set of 5.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation I've been following, and I'm happy that many people have joined in, and it shows that people are willing to comply to this law. And but I just wanted to, on behalf of somebody who was raising the hand, and I think you're not seeing, to just point out to you, there's somebody called Joyce Atimango. I've been seeing her hand for long. I don't know that she's still interested in saying what she wanted to say. Thank you.
Joyce, please make a submission.
Hello?
Joyce, you are not audible. So let's have Pamela Priscilla Namudu. Then we'll read out the last set of 5 questions. Pamela, you are the final submission.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
You're loud and clear.
All right. I would like to ask again, I would just need clarity on 2 things. One, we're having issues on the password reset, so we cannot really access the portal to even start to get the certificate and finally to file this annual compliance report. We've raised this issue with PDPO and we seem to be at a stalemate. I hope there will be a provision for some of us who are not compliant unwillingly if we do not beat the deadline, because this we have raised. PDPO is telling us to use other email addresses which are getting contrary to our data protection like our data protection policies of the company, which we are not willing to violate just because we need to meet something which is already going against ours. I hope PDPO can address this, and you can also give us a certain period not to be penalized for something we are not doing intentionally. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. That is noted. I believe this was addressed earlier on, where you're facing challenges in terms of password reset and the data update. Then please reach out on on our channels that are indicated on the portal, and you will be supported by our team. The team should be in a position to resolve this. But if you are unable to provide the annual compliance report within the prescribed timeline, that is 24th August to the 23rd of November 2026. If you wish to carry out a late submission, then please inform us beforehand. The only caveat is that you will be required to pay a surcharge of Uganda shillings 200,000 for late submission of your annual compliance report. So please note that in terms of the password reset, I'll ask Timothy again to come in and re-emphasize how the password reset can be done. Timothy, once again, for the good of our audience, please take them through the process of password reset and updating details. Can't hear you. Timothy, we can't hear you. Please maybe increase the volume.
Yes, hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
Okay, so the challenge we're experiencing with emails, we have organizations that use private email servers that at times have challenges communicating with the new system. So while we are advising you to update your email address to something that is supported, it's just for the sake of communication and for you to be in position to receive that password reset link. And upon further investigation, we realized that on our end, our system is sending the password reset links, but on your end, you're not receiving it. Most likely, it's because the way those servers are configured, the private email servers, they restrict certain kind of traffic, and this could be handled by your IT team if they can allow traffic coming from the portal, and then you'll be in position to receive the password reset link. But the quickest fix has always been to change that email address to a Gmail or something else like a Yahoo Mail that it can easily communicate with the system and you'll be in position to receive the password reset link. Yeah, so we're really working around that, but when it comes to configuration on your end for you to receive that link, then it's beyond our control. There's nothing much we can do. So, but always, yeah, you can always call in and then we shall give you that guidance on the next step. But everyone who has actually been in position to call in, we have resolved all their password reset challenges and they've been able to onboard onto the portal. But that is just in a nutshell why many organizations are facing challenges. But in case you use a Gmail or any common email service provider, you should not have this challenge ideally. So on our login page, there is of course a password reset link. When you click on it, enter your email address and initiate a password reset process. It is as simple as that. And also, if you have a strong network connection, the password reset link is shared instantly. So, but as always, please, we are a phone call away and we shall address any challenge that you have. So some of these cases are handled on a case by case basis. So you can call in and then we can resolve that, as we have resolved other organizations that had that challenge with the password reset. Okay, allow me submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Maybe just to add, if you're not able to reset on a specific browser, maybe explore the option of also using a different browser, because we've received some feedback from certain users that it may not work on Chrome, but where they use Edge or any other browser, Safari, Firefox, then it usually works. This also is dependent on your browser configuration. So as you seek for support, please also be mindful of some of these idiosyncrasies with your browsers. So Anita, the final set of 5 questions.
Okay. Okay, so the first question. Okay, apologies. I think I just refreshed my page.
Okay, maybe I'll read 5 questions from the chat as you try to refresh, Anita. There's a question from
Okay.
Justin Namuyanja.
Okay.
There are limited fields under the drop-down of the DPO's professional title. None of these apply for our organization's DPO. Can we have the option of other and have the option of filling in the professional title? Yes, this is something that we're going to explore. Like I said earlier, we're in the process of continuous improvement of the portal, because as PDPO, we believe in the principle of Kaizen, the Japanese principle of Kaizen, which is about continuous improvement on a daily basis. So this is something that is being taken under consideration, and it is going to be addressed by our developer team, our technical team. There's a question from Olivia. Any flyers, compliance toolkits from PDPO to allow companies to continue with awareness? Yes, on the portal, we are soon going to roll out modules that contain guidance notes and toolkits, which you'll be able to access. However, again, the caveat stands that you have to be registered with PDPO in order to access some of these services, including flyers and all the like. The issue of login is again coming up. I see it prevalent in the chat. I hope Timothy has been able to address that. But again, if you're experiencing challenges in terms of logging into the portal, please reach out on the channels provided, and you'll be able to receive assistance and technical support. Then is it mandatory for policies to be reviewed and verified every year? Kelvin, the answer to this is no. You don't have to review and verify your policy every year. Internally, you dictate as the entity how often the policy is renewed, depending on the developments that come up within the entity. Maybe if you're engaging new collection processes, new processing activities, then you may need to revisit the data protection and privacy policy. Maybe if you have mechanisms for attending to access requests and you feel that they're out of date, then that may be a prompt to review the policy and update it. However, it is not mandatory to review your policies every year, and the length of time within which the renewal is made is dictated by the entity itself and not by PDPO. Then Linda asks, what are the audit requirements? Linda, are you referring to the section on first-party audits, second-party audits, and third-party audits? If it's first-party audits, then these are normally triggered internally within the entity, and it can be triggered by the DPO or by the management team within the entity. so that you take stock of your data protection and privacy practices within the entity. So what are the requirements? Where it is a first party audit done internally, we just the requirement is that whoever the auditor is should take a look into your data protection and privacy practices. Do you have things, for example, do you have, at a basic level, do you have an inventory of your processing activities? Or it's sometimes referred to as a record of processing activities, a ROPA. Do you have a data privacy policy? How do you handle requests received from your data subjects? How do you respond to requests received from your data subjects? Where you're turning down a request for access to personal information by a subject. How is this handled? What are the procedures? So all those are things that the person auditing can look at internally. When it goes to second party audit, where maybe, for instance, you're being audited by a sub-processor, a subcontractor, then the same will also follow. And similarly, when a PDPO is reviewing you and subjecting you to an audit, these are some of the things that we'll also look at. However, audits are often triggered by things such as maybe continued non-compliance. There are continued observations of non-compliance or non-adherence to the requirements of the Data Protection and Privacy Act and the regulations. Maybe there are continued failures to address complaints received by data subjects, and they make complaints to the PDPO, which are not addressed by the entity. Those are some of the things that would trigger a third-party audit by PDPO. First-party audits, we have no visibility into that, but you can, as the DPO, you can dictate when and why this is done. Not the how, because the auditor must still be independent, but when and why. Maybe you want assurance in terms of your practices internally. So you can ask for that first party audit. I think that is at an end. The final one, Berhanga Ambrose, can we have a list of the requirements and contents of the annual data protection and privacy compliance report? Ambrose, once you get into the portal, the first notice highlights the requirements, and it highlights what you're meant to fill in as you navigate this report. So immediately, as soon as you click on the annual compliance reporting module, there is a notice there that appears, and it stipulates and outlines the requirements that you need to have as you fill in and submit the annual compliance report. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance and your keen attention that has stretched for the last 2 hours. So we shall continue to engage you in terms of the annual compliance reporting. This is not the only engagement that we're going to have, where as and when we have engagements, you'll be made aware of these and the relevant dates and times. But we thank you for sparing time to come to us this morning and afternoon to be engaged on the process of filing your annual data protection and privacy compliance reports. So for those who have colleagues who have not been able to be on this call, on this webinar, please reach out to them, spread out the information, and be mindful of the timelines. 23rd November 2026 is the absolute final deadline, and the channels for the reports, strictly the portal. Thank you, and please scan the QR code to give us your feedback or your evaluation on this webinar. Thank you very much. Anita, over to you.
Davis?
Okay, thank you so much, Davis, for the presentation, and thank you so much, participants, for staying with us up to this time. We usually have webinars for an hour, but today we stretched it to 2 hours. It's wonderful to see that you stayed with us. Like Davis noted, please do scan the code and give us feedback on this training. For those that still have issues to do with password resets, to do with data updates, please reach out to us. The numbers are available on our website. We are always ready. And in case you are unable to get help, if you have sent an email and you've not been able to get help, make a call. If you can't get help, come to the office. We are also available for walk-ins. And we are located at Plot 32, Lumumba Avenue, PDPO House, just in case you don't know where we are. With that, I think this comes to the close of our webinar for today. Please make sure you submit by the 23rd of November. For the DPOs that are not yet on the DPO forum, please drop me an email. You can send us an email at info@pdpo.go.ug so that we add you, because WhatsApp usually makes it easy for you to get updates in real time. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and have a lovely day and weekend ahead. Bye.
Thank you, Anita.